Have you ever wondered what really happens when we close our eyes for the last time? That inevitable moment that awaits all of us, the instant our heart stops beating and our breath ceases. Where do we go? Do we simply cease to exist, or does our consciousness continue in another dimension? This is perhaps humanity's biggest question, one that crosses cultures, religions, and ages. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating and detailed accounts of the soul's journey after physical death, the extraordinary insights of Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet. Get ready for a journey that might completely change how you see life, death, and what comes next. If this topic sparks your curiosity as much as it did mine when I first started researching it, go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now and turn on the notification bell. Also, leave your like so that more people can discover this incredible information. And most importantly, share your own experiences or questions about this topic in the comments. Have you ever had a dream, a gut feeling, or an experience that suggested life goes on after death? Let's build this knowledge together. Edgar Cayce wasn't your average medium. Unlike other sensitive people who claim to communicate with the other side, Cayce would enter a deep trance, almost indistinguishable from sleep, and from that state he accessed what he called the Akashic Records, a sort of universal library containing all the information about every soul that has ever existed. Between 1901 and 1944, Cayce performed more than 14,000 psychic readings, many of which accurately detailed what happens when we die. The most amazing part? Cayce was a simple guy, a photographer by trade and a devout Christian, who in his waking life had only a limited knowledge of esoteric subjects. When he woke from his trances, he was often surprised by the deep insights he had conveyed. His descriptions of the afterlife weren't just vague or poetic, they were systematic, consistent over decades, and incredibly detailed, revealing a structured process that awaits each one of us. According to Cayce, the moment of death is very different from what most of us imagine. It isn't a leap into the unknown or a fall into emptiness. It's more like naturally moving from one room in a house to another. Death is just a portal, he used to say. A change in consciousness. In those final moments, many people feel a deep sense of peace, with earthly worries gradually dissolving away. The fear that so many of us associate with death usually just disappears. Many of those nearing death report seeing departed loved ones coming to get them, acting as guides for this transition. Interestingly, this mirrors the many accounts from nurses and doctors who work with terminal patients, often observing how the dying start talking to people invisible to the living. Slowly, the consciousness expands and leaves behind the limits of the physical body. It's like leaving a dark theater after a long movie and gradually adjusting to the daylight. Except this time, it's the light of a broader reality starting to shine through. The transition of the soul to the spiritual realm, according to Cayce's readings, does not necessarily contradict biblical teachings. Instead, it expands and deepens them in surprising ways. When Ecclesiastes says that dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it, it is actually describing the first stage of this journey. Jesus promised his followers that, "In my Father's house there are many rooms," a statement that takes on new dimensions in light of Cayce's revelations about the multiple planes of existence that await the soul. In fact, many modern theologians have noticed the remarkable parallels between Cayce's detailed accounts and biblical passages that for centuries had remained enigmatic. Jesus' parables of reaping what you sow perfectly echo Cayce's description of a life review, where every action is experienced not only from our own perspective, but also from the perspective of those affected by our choices. The veil between traditional Christian spirituality and the broader vision offered by Cayce is far thinner than most people imagine. When the soul finally breaks free from the bonds of the physical body, it goes through a period of adjustment and guidance. Cayce explains that we are welcomed by loved ones and spiritual guides who help us through this transition. There isn't any immediate external judgment, nor a divine court that decrees our eternal fate. Instead, there is a much deeper and meaningful process. The soul enters a state that Cayce called a life review, a moment in which the entirety of our earthly existence is relived, but with an expanded awareness. Imagine being able to feel not only your own emotions during every interaction in your life, but also the feelings of those you encountered, feeling the pain you caused, the joy you brought, fully understanding the impact of every choice, word, and gesture. This process isn't punitive, it's deeply educational. It's the moment when the soul truly gets the meaning behind the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Though intense, this life review is described as a profoundly enlightening process of self-discovery that prepares us for the next stages of our spiritual journey. It's interesting to note that thousands of people who have had near-death experiences report exactly this kind of panoramic life review, a remarkable convergence with Cayce's accounts that were recorded decades before these scientific studies became popular. After this initial review, the soul begins to realize that the other side isn't a single place, but a continuum of vibrational planes or dimensions. Cayce explained that we naturally move into the plane that corresponds to our level of spiritual development, not through divine judgment, but by vibrational affinity. It's like a natural law. Objects with different densities settle at different levels in a liquid. While the traditional view of heaven and hell suggests an eternal sentence based on earthly behavior, Cayce describes something more dynamic and evolutionary: spiritual schools where our growth continues. These planes aren't final. The soul progresses through them as it evolves in understanding and compassion. The planes closest to Earth are often occupied by souls that remain strongly attached to material desires and issues. The intermediate ones are spaces for learning and service, where many souls dedicate themselves to helping others, whether they are still incarnated or not. The higher planes, which we might call celestial, consist of states of consciousness so expanded that earthly words can barely describe them. They are realms where the separation between the individual and the divine starts to fade. The most extraordinary part is that Cayce believed all souls eventually progress to these higher levels. No one is condemned forever. This idea resonates deeply with the notion of a truly loving and merciful God. So what exactly do the souls do in these spiritual planes? Cayce describes an existence that is surprisingly active and dynamic. Far from the stereotypical image of spirits floating on clouds or endlessly singing in a celestial choir, life after death is full of purpose and activity. Souls keep learning, creating, and serving, a continuous process of evolution. Many souls focus on helping others who are in lower planes or even still physically on Earth. Some work as spiritual guides, inspiring and protecting the ones they left behind. Others engage in advanced studies, exploring the mysteries of the universe that remain out of reach to our limited earthly senses. Cayce noted that there are great centers of learning in the spiritual realms where masters share knowledge about cosmic laws, the nature of creation, and the higher purposes of existence. Creativity blossoms as well. Musicians continue composing, artists keep painting, scientists still explore, but now with more subtle and expansive means than what is available on Earth. Free will stays intact. Souls choose their paths and activities according to their developmental needs. It isn't a static state at all, but a dynamic process of expanding consciousness. This view of the afterlife invites us to reconsider our purpose here on Earth. We aren't just here to earn heaven, but to develop qualities and skills that will continue to use and expand on our eternal journey. The life review mentioned earlier isn't just a one-time event after death, it's a continuous and profound process. As the soul advances in its understanding, it experiences deeper and deeper levels of self-knowledge. Cayce described that we eventually relive our actions not only from the perspective of those directly affected by them, but over time, from the perspective of all humanity, and finally, from the divine viewpoint. Imagine feeling the impact of every choice you made, not only on your immediate circle, but also through the ripple effects spreading across the fabric of reality. A kind word said to a stranger might inspire them to pass on that kindness, sparking a chain of positive events you'd never have guessed you started. Or, conversely, a moment of anger or indifference might cause harm far beyond what we could perceive with our limited vision. This gradual expansion of perception isn't about punishment, it's about transformation. It's what mystics from every tradition have called awakening, or enlightenment. And the most notable part, according to Cayce, this process of expanding consciousness is inevitable for all souls. No matter how long it takes, and for some, it might take many lifetimes, eventually everyone experiences this broadening of awareness that lets us see through the eyes of universal love. Those who have had near-death experiences often say they got a glimpse of this process, describing it as the most transformative experience of their lives, often leading to deep shifts in their values and priorities once they return to their physical bodies. As the soul evolves through these realms and experiences, there comes a time for planning a new incarnation on Earth or in other physical worlds. This is perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Cayce's revelations about the afterlife, the idea that we plan our future lives with intention and purpose. According to his psychic readings, we aren't randomly thrown into new lives. On the contrary, we actively participate in planning our future incarnations. Assisted by spiritual guides and often together with other souls with whom we share deep connections, what he called soul groups, we select the circumstances of our birth, the main relationships, and the challenges we will face. This isn't done as punishment, but as an opportunity for growth. The hardships we face in life aren't random accidents or divine punishments. They are carefully chosen challenges meant to help us develop spiritually. That persistent lack you might have felt since birth, that challenging family relationship, that inexplicable draw to a certain career despite all logic, all of these can be elements planned before we were born. Cayce explained that we consciously forget this planning at birth. The veil of forgetfulness is necessary so we can make genuine choices and learn the intended lessons. Still, our intuition, our dreams, and those meaningful coincidences that Jung referred to as synchronicities are often clues, subtle reminders of the higher purpose we chose to follow. The concept of prenatal planning raises a fascinating question. If we choose the challenges in our lives ourselves, what is the greater purpose behind it all? According to Cayce, each soul is on a journey back to unity with the divine, but not like a drop lost in the ocean, losing its identity. Instead, it's a journey toward becoming a conscious co-creator, a partner in the universal creative process. Our earthly experiences, with all their joys and sorrows, serve as training grounds where we develop the qualities needed for this divine partnership: compassion, wisdom, creativity, patience, forgiveness. Every challenge we face was designed to develop a specific aspect of our spiritual self. That persistent financial struggle might be teaching you detachment and trust. A tumultuous relationship could be building your capacity for forgiveness and understanding. A painful loss might be expanding your ability to love beyond physical limits. Cayce emphasized that we are not alone on this journey. We're constantly assisted by our spiritual guides and connected to our soul group, even if we're rarely aware of these loving presences. And perhaps the most extraordinary thing, according to him, time as we know it doesn't exist in the spiritual realms. This means that the planning of a life itself, the transition from death, and the return to the spiritual plane aren't events in a linear, sequential order from the soul's perspective. They're parts of a complex, multi-dimensional pattern that transcends our time-bound understanding. It's important to note that Cayce never asked anyone to blindly believe his revelations. On the contrary, he often encouraged people to put these ideas to the test in their own lives and to judge for themselves. The way to know is to apply, he said. In the over 14,000 readings he performed, one constant theme emerged: the importance of living consciously, treating every encounter and every challenge as an opportunity for spiritual growth. And if we really plan our lives as Cayce suggests, then there are no random events, only opportunities hidden in obstacles. Those who have had near-death experiences often come back with this same transformative insight, that life has a profound purpose that goes far beyond our daily material concerns. They report a radical shift in priorities, from chasing material success to nurturing loving connections, from accumulating possessions to gathering meaningful experiences, from fearing death to fully embracing life. This expanded perspective doesn't diminish the importance of our earthly existence. It elevates every moment into a sacred opportunity for choice and growth. What happens after death, according to Edgar Cayce's revelations, isn't the end of a story, but a chapter in a much larger journey. Death isn't a conclusion, but a transition. Not a period, but a comma in the eternal narrative of the soul. If these ideas resonate with you, whether they confirm intuitions you've always had or introduce entirely new and intriguing concepts, think about how this perspective might transform your everyday approach to life. How would you live differently if you knew that every interaction, every decision, every moment of kindness or indifference would be experienced again not only from your perspective, but also from the viewpoint of those affected by your actions? How would your priorities change if you recognize that you're developing qualities and abilities that will continue far beyond this current life? Some people ask, if we really are going to forget all of this when we're born, what's the point of knowing these ideas now? According to Cayce, being aware of these spiritual truths can help us align our daily choices with our highest purpose, with reducing the unnecessary suffering that comes from resisting the lessons we choose to learn. It's like receiving a map for a journey we already agreed to take. The map doesn't change the destination, but it can make the path less rocky and more straightforward. And perhaps most importantly, this broadened view of existence can dissolve the fear of death that haunts so many, replacing it with a deep understanding that we are eternal beings on a temporary journey through the physical world. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more explorations into the mysteries of consciousness and spirituality. Share your own intuitions, experiences, or questions about what happens after death in the comments. We're all learning together. In our next video, we'll look into another fascinating aspect of Cayce's readings, his amazing revelations about lost civilizations and the real history of humanity. Until then, remember the words Cayce often repeated in his readings. The spirit is life. The mind is the builder. The physical is the result. May this wisdom light your way. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get more stories like this. There is a greater purpose for your life. Every challenge, every relationship, every moment of joy or sadness was chosen, not by some external force, but by you in a state of heightened wisdom that goes beyond your current awareness. The next time you face an apparently insurmountable obstacle or a devastating loss, consider the possibility that your soul chose that experience precisely because it holds the seed of the growth you need right now. As Cayce often reminded us, there are no failures in life, only lessons. And when your time for transition eventually comes, as it will for all of us, you'll be able to face it not with fear, but with the calm understanding that you're simply coming home, carrying with you the treasures of wisdom and love that are the true purpose of every life.